Amazing bet exposed. Rich rancher's surprising encounter with widow transforms his life forever. Jake Harmon stood on the sprawling balcony of his estate, overlooking the endless waves of golden grass that stretched toward the horizon. It was a gathering of the town's elite, champagne glasses glinting in the setting sun. As laughter echoed around him, Jake felt an inexplicable distance from the celebration, a heaviness anchoring his heart. He had built this facade of success, but at what cost? Staring down at the well-manicured lawn, he felt like an imposter among his affluent peers. C'est moi, Jake. But you can't last a week living like a hand. His friend boomed, nudging him, laughter mingling with a mocking challenge. Jake should have brushed it off, but impulsively desperate to prove his toughness, he accepted. Deep inside, unease coiled tightly. What did it mean to live like a ranch hand? He hadn't lifted a shovel in years, privileged enough to hire others to toil under the sun. He left that night, confident but oblivious to the actual significance of the decision he had made. The contrast between his world and the grueling reality of ranch life began to crystallize as he stepped into Clara's life, a widow barely keeping her small dairy farm afloat. Each dawn found her bent over, hands raw, working through the exertion while her children scampered about, their laughter echoing through the morning air. Initial contempt transformed into perplexity. Jake watched her toil, her face a canvas of struggle and grit. "Think you can survive?" A voice whispered in his mind, taunting him mercilessly. They were issues he had only skimmed over in his mind: financial uncertainties, the constant threat of losing everything. And here he was, free to walk away anytime. But something held him there, gripping his heart. Clara's tenacity stirred feelings of guilt, a sharp contrast to his complacency. This wasn't just a bet anymore. These were lives, real lives, tethered to their cherished lands. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Jake's perspective wavered with every hour spent alongside Clara. She was relentless, pouring everything into her work. He couldn't shake the way her perseverance ignited a fire of uncertainty within him. Was he truly better for being wealthy, or merely sheltered from reality? An insatiable craving for clarity clawed at him. He realized no amount of feed or skilled hands could mask the hollowness of unearned success. The breaking point came when he uncovered a scheme, a plot by his affluent friends to take Clara's land. The anger bubbled within him, rising like bile. They were poised to strip her of everything she held dear. Torn between loyalty to his peers and reevaluation of his entire existence, Jake wrestled with gut-wrenching choice. Could he really betray the principles his father instilled in him for the sake of status? The two worlds collided in a violent storm within him, each moment amplifying the stakes. He felt the cracks begin to form in his meticulously constructed life, standing at a precipice. Would he abandon everything he once saw as power, or finally embrace the struggle? The choice loomed immense, the air charged with tension, leaving him to grapple with the daunting question: could he take a stand for Clara, or sink back into the comfort of his old life? The horizon swirled with possibility, yet remained terrifyingly uncertain as he faced the encroaching darkness. Jake stood outside Clara's modest, worn-down farmhouse, the sun dipping low, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The air buzzed with the sounds of nature and the distant laughter of Clara's children at play. It grounded him, pulling him out of his spiraling thoughts. Each day he spent here peeled away layers of his past, revealing the emptiness beneath. His thoughts churned like restless water as he replayed the conversation with his friends. Their plans to buy out Clara, viewing her struggle as an opportunity for a lucrative investment, made him grind his teeth. The familiarity of their cutthroat ambitions gnawed at him like a persistent ache. Yet, something in his guts twisted at the thought of allowing that to happen. He had never chosen loyalty over profit before. Was it too late to change that? Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside the farmhouse, where Clara was preparing dinner. The modest meal of potatoes and fresh milk served as a stark reminder of his privilege. He felt the heat of her kitchen embrace him, yet it brought no comfort. Jake couldn't ignore the way her hands moved deftly and familiarly, as if each task were a component in a larger battle she fought daily. His heart sank as he thought of the impending betrayal that could scorch her dreams and legacy. "Hey, you okay?" Clara looked up from the stove, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. He hesitated, debating whether to share the looming threat. But transparency felt essential now more than ever. Jake cleared his throat, weighing the gravity of his choice. I know something about your land." She turned fully to face him, eyes wide, bracing for what he would reveal. "It's not good. My friends, the ones who think your land will make them rich, they're trying to buy it up." Her brows furrowed, and he could see emotions flicker across her face. Fear, disbelief, and an undercurrent of anger. "What do you mean, trying to buy it? It's not for sale. I would never sell." "I know, Clara," he responded, his voice barely a whisper now. "But they believe they can manipulate the situation. They think money will win, and you'll have no other option." The words hung heavy in the air between them. She turned away, her hands bunching into fists at her sides, a flurry of vulnerability and resolve in the way she held herself. Jake longed to reach out, but refrained, knowing he had no right to comfort someone who was fighting her own battle. "I want to let them take it," she said steadily, her voice sharpening with determination. "I'll fight." The ferocity in her words stirred something deep inside him. Clara was a fighter, and here he was, a mere spectator in her life. His heart raced, igniting a newfound conviction. "I want to help." The offer escaped him before he could rationalize it. She turned toward him, her expression shifting from astonishment to cautious hope. "What can you do? You don't know this life, Jake." The truth cut deeply, yet her challenge only propelled him forward. "I might not know it, but I have resources. I can find a way to protect you, to protect this place." Clara's gaze bore into him, analyzing him as if seeking the kernel of genuineness in his conviction. He felt vulnerable under her scrutiny. This was the moment. Could he shed his past self, or would he succumb to the pressure of his old life? "Are you sure you want to get involved?" she finally asked, her voice low, a hint of caution threading through. "More than I've ever been," he replied, a mixture of fear and exhilaration coursing through him. For the first time, he felt the thrill of purpose, igniting his ambition in a way his previous lifestyle never had. As they locked eyes, the silent agreement passed between them like a spark. It was time to confront the man. He was a man for whom decisions mattered, and to carve a pathway forward, no matter the cost. The horizon was no longer about watching the sun set, but a promise of a fight, a struggle he was willing to join. Jake felt the weight of his choice settle on his shoulders. What lay ahead could change the course of his life entirely, driving him toward a conflict that would ultimately define who he truly was. The heat of resolve burned brightly, but the question remained: how far was he willing to go for Clara and her home? The specter of confrontation with his affluent friends loomed closer, and the time had come to face the storm head-on. What steps would he take next? Jake's resolve anchored deeper in him as he stepped out of Clara's farmhouse, the intensity of their conversation still resonating in every corner of his mind. The wind carried the scent of earth and growing crops, a bittersweet reminder of what was at stake: not just Clara's land, but his own awakening. He had always thrived in the chaos of ambition, but now he found himself grappling with something larger, a purpose intertwined with another's fate. The evening air was cooler than it had been earlier, carrying with it the promise of a challenge. Jake's thoughts raced forward, dissecting the implications of his decision. The threat posed by his friends loomed larger, their familiarity with ruthless tactics making it unlikely they would back down easily. Yet, the clarity brought about by his newfound purpose forced him to confront his own patterns of behavior. No longer unwilling to challenge the status quo, it was time to pivot from years of passive involvement in selfish endeavors. He spent the night lying awake, visions of Clara's determined face flitting through his thoughts like shadows on the wall. Each flicker prompted a sense of duty, urging him to outline a strategy. He picked up his phone to scroll through numbers of contacts who might provide legal counsel, financial assistance, or even media exposure. He paused at the prospect of reaching out to someone from his past who had a reputation for standing up against corporate bullies, someone who could help expose the truth of what was happening. But that could mean putting his loyalties to the test again, risking rejection from those he had once called friends. Morning brought new resolve, wrapping itself around him like the warmth of the sun beaming through the farmhouse windows. Jake prepared breakfast, the rhythmic clinking of pans providing an unexpected rhythm to his thoughts. The simplicity of the actions grounded him, reminding him of the purpose that was steadily taking root within. After Clara woke, her sleepy eyes found his, and he felt a rush of accountability wash over him. "I've been thinking," he said as they shared breakfast. "We can't just sit back and hope they back off. We need a plan." Clara nodded, her focus sharpening as if awakening to a shared mission. What surprised Jake was her immediate readiness to contribute, her instinctive grasp of the situation. "What do you have in mind?" "We can document everything, gather evidence of their intent. If they think they can intimidate you into selling, we'll make it public," he proposed, fervently tapping into his business acumen honed over years of maneuvering through less ethical waters. "And what if they retaliate?" Clara's eyes flared, both a challenge and a real fear. "These are not just boys playing games. They have resources and connections." Jake felt a flicker of doubt, but it quickly transformed into determination. "Then we find a way to level the playing field. I can tap into contacts who deal with media. A story can gain traction. Public opinion can be a formidable weapon." Clara paused, contemplating his words, then exhaled, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "Okay, but you must be careful. If they see you as a threat, it may get dangerous." Jake thought for a moment, then nodded firmly. "That's a risk I'm willing to take. For the first time, I feel like there's weight in my choices. If they come after us, we want to go down quietly." The day unfolded around them with intense planning, a flurry of calls and strategizing. Each conversation forged a bond. Every contact felt like a step further away from the person he used to be, closer to becoming the man Clara needed. That evening, with the sun setting in blazing colors, illuminated by the promise of a new dawn, Jake felt a warmth in his chest. Perhaps this was what he had been missing all along, the sense of purpose, fighting alongside someone whose values aligned with his newly evolving character. The stakes were high, but the thrill was intoxicating. Yet, as he lay in bed that night, one question gnawed relentlessly at him. What price would he have to pay for ensuring Clara's legacy remained intact, for truly standing against the tide of material greed that had defined so much of his life until now? As dawn approached, the shadows of his friends crept back, whispering doubts wrapped in familiarity. The end of one era was tangible, and the beginning of another was near. But was he truly ready to face what was coming? Tomorrow would unveil the first clash of confrontation that he could no longer avoid. At what point would loyalty get tested in ways that could cost him everything he ever knew? Jake woke before dawn, the unfamiliar echoes of uncertainty stirring him from restless sleep. He lay in bed, contemplating the confrontation that loomed ahead. With every tick of the clock, he could feel the weight of expectation pressing down on him. This wasn't just about Clara's lands anymore. It was about his transformation from a passive observer into an active participant in a life that meant more than self-interest. As he dressed, the fabric of his shirt felt different against his skin, less about appearances and more about purpose. The decision to stand by Clara brought with it an urgency that he could barely contain. He was no longer just Jake, the ambitious man with an edge. He was Jake, the ally fighting against greed, and the implications stirred something deep within him. After breakfast with Clara, Her quiet determination ignited a spark of adrenaline within him. "We need to set our plan in motion," he said, analyzing the gleam of determination in her eyes. She was more than just a landowner now. She was a force, and he vowed to become worthy of standing beside her. The first call was to an investigative journalist he had known in his past, someone who had written scathing pieces about corrupt companies. He could almost hear the click of the phone connecting him to his old world, a world he knew he was on the verge of exploding. When the journalist answered, Jake's voice quavered slightly at first, but as he recounted Clara's plight, it strengthened. This would not be just another story. It was life and death, legacy and integrity. "Meet me at the cafe by the old park," the journalist suggested. "I want to see the evidence you have before we take this further." With every word exchanged, Jake sensed the pulse of purpose racing through him. It was intoxicating. After hanging up, he felt a surge of excitement mixed with anxiety. The journalist's genuine interest meant he was stepping into a world of accountability. But doubt crept in. What if he stumbled? What if his friends found out what he was doing? The familiar faces from his past danced in his consciousness, whispering fears of betrayal and isolation. Jake shook off those thoughts. Today was about confronting those whispers. He refused to let his past dictate his future. With a renewed sense of determination, he turned the key to the old pickup truck, the familiar sound igniting memories of simpler times. The cafe was buzzing with early morning patrons. The smell of coffee wafted through the air like a siren call. He spotted the journalist seated by the window, immersed in his notebook. His demeanor was serious, hinting at the magnitude of the conversation about to unfold. "Thanks for coming," Jake began, shaky breath escaping him as he sat down. His nervousness was evident, but the journalist's encouraging nod was enough to pull him back to focus. "I've been deeply following the developments regarding Clara." The journalist's tone was grave, reflecting the seriousness of their discussion. Jake shared everything: the threats, the underhanded tactics, and Clara's resolve to stand her ground. The more he revealed, the clearer his purpose became. In that moment, he wasn't just a businessman spouting corporate jargon. He was a partner in a battle for justice. After recounting Clara's situation, Jake's voice grew stronger, fueled by the conviction of his own words. With each piece of evidence he presented, he could feel old layers of doubt peeling away. The meeting concluded with promises. The journalist was on board, eager to help expose the truth. As he left the cafe, a weight lifted from Jake's shoulders. But uncertainty still lingered. What if his friends retaliated? What if standing up meant he had to face consequences he couldn't anticipate? Driving back, Jake felt the pulse of responsibility guiding him like a compass. There was no turning back now, only forward into an unknown that was electrifying and daunting at the same time. The sunset painted the horizon in fiery hues, mirroring the tumult of emotions whirling inside him. He had crossed a threshold. The moment of truth was growing nearer. He would soon have to confront his past allegiances head-on, testing his morals against the loyalty he had known for years. As he parked the truck and walked toward the farmhouse, tension built in his chest, a familiar thrill mixed with fear. He was ready to meet Clara, but was ready to face the repercussions of his decisions. Tomorrow's confrontation would not just challenge Clara's future, but would force Jake to confront what he valued most: loyalty or integrity. As night fell, he knew that the real battle was just beginning. The question loomed over him like the encroaching darkness. Would he become the hero he aspired to be, or would he crumble under the weight of his choices? As dawn broke, Jake felt the tension settling in the pit of his stomach. Each beam of sunlight that streamed through the window felt like a spotlight, revealing the profound crossroads he now faced. He had made a choice, but the enormity of its implications began to sink in. Today would be transformative, not just for Clara, but for him as well. He arrived at the farmhouse and found Clara in her garden, knee-deep in the soil, a symbol of the roots she had established despite the storms that threatened to uproot her. She looked up, a mixture of resilience and vulnerability reflecting in her eyes. The sight stirred something powerful within him, an unwavering determination to fight for her. "Are you ready for what comes next?" Clara asked, brushing dirt from her hands. Jake hesitated, aware that this wasn't just about strategy. It was about exposing the layers of corruption that had become all too familiar. "It's not just what lies ahead, Clara. It's about who I am now," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. A silence followed as Clara studied him, searching for something beneath the surface. The tension in the air spoke volumes, a promise of confrontation and the potential for personal evolution. In the wake of their conversation, Jake's mind raced, replaying his decisions and the paths they had opened. He had paved the way for Clara to finally fight back. "We have to leverage everything we've got. The evidence is one thing, but your story? It's personal, it's powerful." Clara nodded, appreciation evident on her face. "It's time for the world to know." As they strategized, Jake's thoughts drifted to his friends and the legacy of his past, the ones destined to call him out for this bridge he was burning. There was a depth to his fear that made him question whether he had the strength to withstand the backlash that was sure to come. Would his friends even recognize the man he was becoming? More importantly, would he recognize himself? Determined to shake off the doubt, Jake took a moment to focus inwardly. He recalled the journalist's expressions during their meeting, the affirmations they shared. While he had walked in as an uncertain ally, he now felt the shift of responsibility settle like armor around him. Each passing thought reshaped his identity, fueling a fire he had long overlooked. He would not only stand beside Clara, he would be her advocate, a force unwilling to back down. The hours crawled as they prepared. Jake found himself balancing between strategizing their approach and grappling with his personal demons. Before he knew it, the time had come for them to meet the journalist again, this time not just as informants, but as crusaders. The drive to the agreed location felt like a pilgrimage. Jake's heart ran wild with anticipation, tempered with the gnawing fear that his personal stakes were escalating. Clara's unwavering confidence next to him pulsed with strength, reminding him that he wasn't alone. They were a team now, intertwined in their shared quest for justice. Arriving at the designated spot, Jake took a deep breath and scanned their surroundings. Every detail, the way the trees cast long shadows, the wind carrying with it a sense of foreboding, played into his growing anticipation for what would come. If they succeeded, it wouldn't just be Clara's life they altered. It would redefine his very perception of loyalty and integrity. As they approached the journalist, waiting with his notebook poised, Jake felt a wave of emotions displace the earlier fear. They would not just be unveiling the truth about corporate greed. They were unveiling themselves. In that moment, he realized the confrontation wasn't merely with the journalist or the corrupt entities they were targeting. It was fundamentally with himself. What did it mean to be brave? What did it mean to stand up for one's beliefs, even in the face of possible ruin? With Clara by his side, he was about to confront not just the challenges ahead, but also the man he was becoming, the ally forged in adversity, a catalyst for change. As their footsteps approached, Jake felt the weight of his decisions coalesce into a singular thought. Today would determine who he truly was. The moment hung in the air, poised between revelation and doubt, waiting for a spark. Would this be the day he finally stepped into the man he had always wanted to be? Or would the echoes of his past once again drown him in uncertainty? As the journalist lifted his gaze, the dialogue began, and Jake took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next. As the first words left the journalist's mouth, Jake's heart quickened. Each syllable cracked through his apprehension, igniting a blend of courage and vulnerability that surged through him. Conversation flowed. Clara told her story, her voice turning the abstract into the intimate. Jake found himself enraptured, not just by her words, but by the weight they carried, the tales of betrayal, loss, and the unyielding urgency to reclaim justice. Listening intently, he began to see a powerful shift within himself. He was no longer just an adjunct to her narrative. He was an essential component of this journey, a co-writer of a new chapter neither of them had envisioned. Each point they discussed, each fact revealed about the corporate malfeasance they sought to expose, pounded rhythmically against the walls of his self-doubt, dismantling them piece by piece. Jake interjected occasionally, kicking the conversation into a higher gear. The journalist's eyes lit up as the enormity of the corruption unfolded before him. Their synergy brought him confidence, not just as a facilitator, but as an active participant demanding answers. This isn't just a story, he found himself saying. It's a battle cry for all those who've been silenced. The words felt foreign yet natural, striking a chord deep within him. As they wrapped up, the gravity of their undertaking crashed down on him. Sharing Clara's truth was a pact. It tied them together under the anvil of potential reprisal. Would it mean losing friendships, or far worse? Would the repercussions ripple back into his life, turning the course he'd chosen into a harder, more isolating reality? The journalist packed his materials, nodding sagely as he reflected on the conversations they just had. Continue to prepare yourselves. The truth is powerful, but it can twist in ways no one expects. Those words bounced around Jake's mind, underscoring the uncertainty lying just beneath the surface of their newfound alliance. Despite the journalist's warning, a desire to act surged within him. Leaving the woods that day, he stared out of the car window, the reality of his decision crashing into focus. He wasn't merely an observer. He was a participant in something monumental that had the potential to reshape lives. As paradigms shifted, so did his understanding of himself. This sense of purpose reignited the flicker of ambition he had buried for far too long. Still, there was a lingering discomfort. Over the next few days, while Clara prepared for the journalist's subsequent visit, Jake found himself grappling with a restlessness that was both foreign and familiar. It wasn't just fear. It was a deeper contemplation of who he was becoming. This journey demanded he confront his past, the friendships he might sacrifice, and the persona he'd leaned on for so long. He began to jot notes in his worn journal reflections on his fears, aspirations, and moral dilemmas. The ink felt like both an anchor and a map, guiding him through the murky waters ahead. One afternoon, as they strategized at the farmhouse, Jake brought up the implications of their choice. "Clara," he began, hesitating over the weight of his next words. "What if we lose everything? What if the people closest to us turn against us?" There it was, the fear of losing the familiar warmth of acceptance he had always known. Clara paused, searching his face. "I can't promise we'll emerge unscathed, Jake, but I can promise that if we don't do this, we will lose something far more important, our integrity." Her words settled deep, anchoring him in a defiant curiosity. Could he really define his legacy by living in the shadows? Would facing discomfort with courage cultivate a future where he could finally honor his own beliefs? With each day that passed, Jake felt a steady pulse of resolve building within him. His hands, once trembling with uncertainty, began to grasp the reins of his life with more conviction. He was no longer the passive spectator. He was becoming the architect of his fate. And as they faced the coming storm, he had to wonder, could this confrontation with their shared foe also lead to a confrontation with his truest self? The more he contemplated, the more he realized that their fight was not just against the external, but an internal struggle to embrace all that he could become. As their first major meeting with the journalist loomed closer, Jake looked at Clara, the fire of resolve mirroring in her eyes. He didn't just want to confront the company's greed. He craved the confrontation that lay ahead within himself, testing his moral fiber, his drive, and ultimately, the man he would fight to be. In that moment of preparation and anticipation, the question spiraled in his mind: what if the real battle was yet to come? Would he rise to face it, or retreat back to the shadows he was struggling to escape? The day dawned heavy with anticipation, a portent of the decisions that loomed ahead. Jake stood at the threshold of Clara's farmhouse. The familiar worn wooden door now felt like a portal to an uncertain future. In the stillness, he absorbed the surrounding landscape. The fields lay untouched, but he could sense the storm brewing. The weight of upcoming revelations weighed heavily on his shoulders. As Clara entered, her presence radiated determination. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice steady. It was a simple question, yet it called forth a cascade of internal responses: fear, uncertainty, and an undercurrent of fierce resolve. He nodded, though internally, doubt clawed at his resolve. Were they truly prepared for what lay ahead? They sat together at the rustic dining table strewn with notes and reports. Each document represented the weight of the unknown, exposing a company that had silenced so many. It was exhilarating and paralyzing at once. Jake could feel the transformative energy coursing through him, yet he was haunted by the specter of what could be lost. As Clara reviewed their strategic plan, Jake's mind drifted back to the friendships he had taken for granted. A smattering of voices echoed in his memory: laughter, camaraderie, and moments of unabashed joy. Would those connections withstand the storm of truth they were about to unleash? It dawned on him that he had been clinging to the past like a crutch, fearful that without those connections, he would be left adrift. "Jake?" Clara's voice pulled him back to the present, her eyes searching his. There was a moment of silence before she continued. "We're not just seeking change for ourselves. We are fighting for those who can't fight. We're their voice." The gravity of her words struck him. It was as if she had flicked a switch inside him, illuminating a path he hadn't allowed himself to envision. Drawing in a deep breath, Jake stood. The tension coiled in his chest eased slightly, replaced by a burgeoning exhilaration. "You're right," he said, the words tumbling out before he could second-guess them. "This is about so much more than us." He moved instinctively, gathering materials and rearranging notes, feeling the latent potential of purpose coalesce beneath his fingers. Each movement felt symbolic, a tangible step toward embodying the change they sought. As they fine-tuned their approach, the atmosphere grew thick with collaborative purpose. The trepidation that had clung to Jake began to dissipate, replaced by a renewed sense of identity. He was not merely a reporter in a sea of data. He was a catalyst for change, a participant in a narrative larger than himself. Before long, the discussion shifted to the impending interview with the journalist, the pivotal moment that could launch their plight into public consciousness. "What if they don't believe us?" he finally voiced, an edge creeping into his question. Seconds stretched like eternity as Clara contemplated his fears, her brow furrowing in thought. "And what if they do?" she countered, a spark igniting in her eyes. "What if our story transforms someone's life, reveals corruption that's been hidden for too long, or inspires others to speak up?" The implications of her words spun around in his mind like a whirlwind, giving him no choice but to confront his own skepticism. Jake sat back down, the adrenaline of possibility coursing through him. What if they not only exposed the darkness, but also illuminated his own path forward? Would the act of courage in confronting external threats also forge a new identity within himself? This realization pierced through his uncertainty, daring him to face what had been lurking in his shadows. He could not only claim his narrative, but redefine it. No longer willing to be a passive participant in his own life, he prepared for the confrontation ahead, fully aware that the outcome could ripple through every aspect of his existence. "Clara," he said suddenly, determination sparking in his gaze, "we're not just going to take them on. We're going to show them we won back down." They exchanged a glance, a silent agreement. As the wind howled outside, the brewing storm echoed the turmoil that churned within him. This was no longer merely about corporate accountability. It became about forging a new version of himself, one willing to stand tall in the face of adversity. But in the depths of that newfound courage, a question flickered at the edge of his consciousness. When the time came to unleash their truths, would he truly have the strength to bear the consequences? The thought propelled him further into the unknown, leaving a tantalizing question in its wake. What would be the cost of claiming his voice? The sun had barely breached the horizon when Jake awoke, a tumultuous energy swirling within him. He felt the weight of gravity pulling him not just into the day, but into a pivotal chapter of his life. As he slipped into his clothes, the familiar sensations of fabric brushing against his skin felt different. It was a reminder of the urgency pulsing through him. No longer was he simply preparing for another day at work. He was readying for a battle one that tested his very essence. Breakfast was a hurried affair, his mind replaying Clara's words like a haunting melody of motivation that had morphed into an anthem of purpose. As he pushed the remnants of toast aside, he voiced an unspoken anxiety. What if it all backfires? What if we hit a wall that we can't break through? His questions lingered in the air, charged with uncertainty. Clara looked at him and shook her head, a steady hand placed on the table between them. This is about more than fear, Jake. It's about creating ripples. Even if we face rejection, every voice matters. Every truth counts. Her conviction pierced through his self-doubt, challenging the layers of complacency he had wrapped around himself. He was aware of how significantly he had minimized his own voice, skirting around his opinions for so long in favor of safer choices. That realization anchored something deep within him. He was tired of living like a shadow in his own life. As they prepared to leave the farmhouse, a sense of urgency accompanied them. Their timeline was tight, but the adrenaline coursing through Jake's veins allowed him to move with purpose. This was not merely a mission of journalism. This was about reclamation and unearthing of truths suppressed for too long. The drive to the journalist's office was filled with an excited silence, the hum of the engine echoing the anticipation building in Jake's chest. The trees lining the road blurred past, symbols of the steps he was taking away from old routines. With every mile that faded behind him, remnants of self-doubt crumbled. Upon arrival, Jake's heart beat in sync with the pulse of the city, vibrant and alive. The towering buildings juxtaposed their mundane surroundings, representing both obstacles and opportunities. As they walked toward the office, the weight of their task settled upon him, igniting a familiar dread that stuttered his steps. This was the moment of truth. Would he possess the fortitude to embrace it? Inside, the office radiated professionalism and urgency. Journalists hustled and multitasked, their images filling him with inspiration. It was a world he aspired to be part of, one that required courage. He sought clarity amid the chaos, focusing on the idea that they weren't just presenting information, they were advocating for a change. In the conference room, the journalist awaited, her reputation for uncompromising integrity well known in the industry. Jake could sense the tension pooling. This would be the moment that transformed everything. Clara began detailing their findings, her steady voice weaving through intricate details. But partway through the presentation, Jake felt an unusual spark within him ignite and take over. He interjected, his voice sharper than he expected. There's a bigger picture here beyond numbers and figures. These are lives impacted daily. We're not just talking facts. We're discussing human beings who are suffering. His heart raced at the vulnerability he mustered, pushing through the fear of exposure. The journalist paused, her eyes narrowing with interest. Clara glanced at him, a mix of surprise and pride flashing across her features. He was becoming the very change he sought. In this moment, he wasn't just reporting. He was relating a bridge between the story and the people living it. As the conversation unfolded, he felt a shift within himself, a layering of confidence building on the foundation of his vulnerability. The journalist took notes, nodding along as they delved deeper into the ramifications of their findings. Yet, just as they were gaining momentum, the atmosphere shifted. The underlying apprehension gripped him again. What if the pushback was greater than they anticipated? What if they closed doors instead of opening them? Jake took a breath, feeling the pressure of his choices magnifying around him. Yet amid the uncertainty, a stronger resolve anchored him. This was a battle worth pursuing, and he was ready to face whatever consequences would come. Clara, he said, scarcely above a whisper, we're on the right path, and I won't back down from this. But just as clarity settled in his mind, he received a text notification that sent chills down his spine. His past had been laid to rest. It was creeping back into the present, threatening to unravel everything he had just begun to build. What would this sudden revelation mean for their fight? The vibration of Jake's phone pulled him from the cocoon of determination he had just woven around himself. The screen lit up with a name long considered a chaotic ghost of his history. Sarah. Just seeing her name gripped his gut with an icy fist. She was someone he thought he'd escaped, a reminder of past mistakes and missteps that had shaped his earlier life. The text was short, but its implications were vast. We need to talk. It's important. He wrestled with the urgency of it. His past clawed at him, a presence that had no intent of being locked away. The room around him slowly faded into a blur as suspicion darkened his thoughts. He couldn't afford distractions now, not when they were on the brink of something significant. But what if Sarah had information that could jeopardize this new path he had carved out? Clara shifted in her chair, her eyebrows knitting together. Jake, you okay? Her question cut through his haze. I got a message from Sarah, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He met Clara's concerned gaze, seeking reassurance in the solidity of her presence. It was a stark reminder that he was not alone in this battle. You need to make a choice, Clara encouraged softly, but with a steeliness beneath her words. Are you going to let her pull you backward? The juxtaposition of past anxieties and present aspirations bore down heavily on him. Sarah represented everything he aimed to escape: the doubts, the failures, the voice that told him he wasn't enough. He swallowed hard, the pressure coiling around his chest. In an odd way, their meeting felt inevitable. Maybe she could provide closure or drive a wedge deeper into the cracks he was beginning to mend. With a racing heart, he silenced his phone, wishing to deflect the oscillating nagging in his mind. I need to focus on what's happening here, he declared, trying to ground himself in the moment. The journalist was still there, awaiting their insights like a life buoy in an ocean of tumult. Jake realized that his ambition was hanging by a thread, and every day he'd stumbled through insecurity, avoiding the choices that could liberate him. But sidelining Sarah with this newfound determination wouldn't be possible forever. The longer he ignored it, the more tangled the thread would become. Let's dive deeper, he urged Clara, thrusting aside the tumult of personal chaos, knotting his stomach. They returned to their presentation, but the uncertainty loomed like a storm cloud. As Jake leaned into the conversation, exploring the textures of their findings with a sense of urgency, his mind oscillated between the growing momentum of the discussion and the chaos Sarah's message had sparked. It was a test his commitment to growth and change pressed against the haunting familiar pull of the past. The journalist nodded approvingly as Jake articulated the long-term impacts of their work. The words escaped him as a torrent of determination surged through his veins. For once, he wasn't just echoing facts. He was weaving a narrative of hope. But with each detail he presented, the quieter his resolve about ignoring the text became. Each assertion of his newfound voice propelled him closer to reclaiming his narrative, the one Sarah once held significant power over. And yet, as their discussion unfolded, he couldn't shake the gnawing sensation that Sarah's return could split his newfound identity like ice beneath his feet. The stakes were higher than he had anticipated, with the shadow of his past looming large over his aspirations. As they finished the presentation, the journalist expressed deep interest in collaborating further. Jake felt a rush of elation, the elusive validation he had yearned for finally within reach. Yet the triumph was bittersweet. Deep inside, he knew he couldn't escape the confrontation with Sarah forever. Jake, great job, Clara praised, a soft smile on her face reflecting pride in his growth. But that was it. Jake wasn't certain how great it could keep being without facing the past. He needed a plan. Would he confront Sarah? Would he allow her to challenge everything he was trying to build? He knew the answer wouldn't come easily, yet there remained an undeniable pull towards a reckoning. The choices he had left unmade began to accumulate in his mind, weighing heavily on his future. With that surge of clarity came the daunting realization that in this struggle to forge ahead, he might be faced with the very truth he had tried to leave behind. The time had come to face what lay in the shadows, and that confrontation could very well shape the course of everything he worked so desperately to build. The decision to confront Sarah loomed over Jake like a gathering storm. The weight of their past intertwined with his desire for a future grounded in integrity and purpose. Turning away from the shards of who he used to be no longer felt like a viable option. He needed to face the choices laid out before him with courage, not just for himself, but for Clara and the lives they strived to protect. With Clara by his side, he returned to the farmhouse, their workspace humming with urgency. The sun was setting, casting golden rays through the window, painting a path of light that seemed to beckon him toward clarity. As they sat together, strategizing their next moves in their fight against the corporate greed threatening Clara's land, Jake felt both grounded and anxious. "Tonight, I'll call Sarah," he finally admitted, the words hanging heavily in the air. Clara stopped, her attention sharpening as she regarded him thoughtfully. "Are you sure?" she asked, genuine concern etched in her features. "You know what she represents." Jake nodded, pushing through the grasping tendrils of doubt. "I can't move forward without facing what's brought me to this fork in the road. I owe it to myself and to you." Each second ticked away as they resumed planning, his mind racing with possibilities of how his past could resurface. Clara, sensing the tension yet believing in his resolve, offered pointed insights about building their case. Their shared commitment swirled creatively around them, illuminating the absolute necessity of taking ownership of their stories. The evening wore on, but Jake found little solace. Anxiety coiled within him like a serpent, drawing nearer with each hour that passed. It was not only the impending conversation with Sarah that gnawed at him. It was the recognition of how far he had come. He was transformed, reshaped through honest toil alongside Clara, spurred on by the mission ahead. As they wrapped up their discussions, a fire ignited within. Jake felt an immense urge to step into the man he had longed to be, free from the chains of insecurity. He dialed Sarah's number with a steadiness he hadn't expected. "Jake!" Her voice cracked through the line. A flood of memories surged forth, moments of laughter interwoven with shadows of pain. "I didn't think I'd hear from you again." Her tone was softer, unguarded, but he had no time for hesitation. "We need to talk," he asserted, an unwavering resolve coloring his words. "I can't move forward without addressing our past." That simple acknowledgement unlocked something profound within him. Facing her felt like a pivotal piece of a larger puzzle, each move influencing the outcome of this intricate game he was engaged in. They agreed to meet at a small cafe, and as he pulled up to the familiar spot, a rush of memories washed over him. The seats, the tables, the very air of the place seemed thick with nostalgia. Jake took a deep breath, steeling himself before entering. When he saw Sarah sitting at a corner table, he noted the way she had changed, a reflection of personal growth mirrored in her demeanor. Their eyes locked, and with a determined stride, he approached. "Thanks for coming," he said, gestures tentative. "Of course," she replied, her smile both inviting and cautious. "I missed you." Jake ran a hand through his hair, uncertain of where to begin. "It's been a difficult path without you, but I've realized something. I can't carry this weight from the past anymore." The tension in the air shifted, threading through the space separating them. She sighed, the release a reflection of the tangled web they had woven. "I realized the same things, Jake. We were both running, if not together, then from each other." As they spoke, Jake could feel the tremors of his past dissipating like shadows at dawn. Their conversation oscillated between punctuated pain and the familiar warmth of friendship. The acknowledgement of their missteps allowed the light to seep through the cracks, and regret shifted to understanding. "Whatever happens next is out of our hands," he stated, his voice strong. "But I have a chance now to do something meaningful with my life, with Clara. I want to create a future built on honesty and integrity." Seriousness washed over her features as reality settled into the conversation. "I see that, Jake. You've grown. I'm proud of you for that. Unexpectedly, his heart soared. Recognition, validation, it all felt like a massive expanse of possibilities opening before him. While their past was filled with tumult, the present presented a new understanding. Change is hard, but our choices can reshape us, he said, voice full of conviction. This confrontation is necessary for both of us. In that moment, as they both came to terms with their lives, Jake felt a sense of liberation washing over him. With the weight of their past no longer anchoring him down, he found an unexpected strength coursing through his veins. They spoke until the sun sets, and finally, he understood. Jake left the cafe with newfound clarity about his identity, his goals, and the values he would uphold moving forward. He had not only reconnected with Sarah, but had conquered the final remnants of hesitation that lingered in his mind. Both Sarah and Clara had played vital roles in his transformation, but it was Jake who was reclaiming agency over his choices. As he walked back to the farmhouse, the night air filled with the promise of determination, he felt invincible, ready to face whatever lay ahead, relics of his old life flickering behind him. Tomorrow, he would step further into his commitment to Clara, continuing their fight against injustice. This was a culmination of his journey, a defining moment that reflected the man he had become, a figure forged in the flames of struggle, courage, and purpose. As the stars glittered overhead, he embraced the dawn of a new chapter, one not only marked by hard-fought personal success, but also by genuine fulfillment that extended beyond himself. Jake had achieved what many only dreamed of. The courage to step forward against adversity became his legacy. Now, it was time to unleash their story, to let the world know that standing for something was paramount, and he would champion that cause wholeheartedly. You need to subscribe now to witness more stories that echo personal transformations. This is the moment to show your support. Don't let it pass you by. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach those who seek inspiration. Comment your thoughts and reactions about how Jake's journey unfolded. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Together, let us uplift those who dare to pursue personal growth against all odds.